Hello everyone, it's certainly been a little bit of a longer time between some of these pub rants, hasn't it? But I'm back now, don't worry. And so, let's begin on another pub rant. This time, we're talking about Velociraptor. So, let's start the story. When I say Velociraptor, what do you think of? Well, if you are, a reasonably smart person who keeps up with the times, this is what you think of. However, I would not be upset if this came to mind, of course, as, well, Jurassic Park is one of the most successful movie franchises of all time. But how did this happen? How did this misconception of Velociraptor at this great size happen? How did this come about? Well, let's go back in time then. Let's take a look. Welcome to the 1920s. We got flappers, we've got jazz, we've got Spanish flu, we've got civil war in Russia. And it's that last one that is incredibly important. Now, the Russian Civil War is an incredibly complicated topic that I do not have the time or the willpower to get into right now. However, what we are looking at here is this country, Mongolia. Now, prior to the Civil War, Mongolia had been in the Russian sphere of influence. And during the war, it had been taken over by a weird guy who claimed himself to be the descendant of Genghis Khan, and tried to proclaim an independent Mongolia that was backed by the white government, basically the royalists, right, the Tsars. And, of course, this led to the Bolsheviks coming in and taking over. The Bolsheviks, of course, being the communists who would turn the Russian Empire into the Soviet Union for the next century. And this also brings us to this man, Roy Chapman Andrews. Roy Chapman Andrews was an American paleontologist who spent a lot of time in the Far East, particularly in Mongolia's Gobi Desert. And he has actually been cited as Spielberg's inspiration for the character of Indiana Jones. Just a neat little trivia thing to throw in there. It was on one of these expeditions that Chapman and his crew discovered the first ever dinosaur eggs. Similarly, on this expedition, they also discovered the fossilized remains of the first Velociraptor. Now, with the fact that this expedition also found eggs and baby dinosaurs, it was assumed that this was just a young'un, right? That's gotta be why it was so small. It was just a juvenile, perhaps an adolescent, who knows, but it certainly wasn't fully grown, which is what the Americans thought. And then they were forced out of the country. Well, you might ask, well, things had been going alright, but everything changed when the Soviets attacked. And they promptly kicked out the Americans, believing them to be Western spies going against the glorious revolution. And that became the global order. As the Soviets cemented their control over Mongolia, they kept the West out. This does not mean the end of expeditions to Mongolia, as there would be joint Soviet, Mongolian, and then later Soviet and Polish expeditions into the Gobi Desert, which would uncover one of the most famous dinosaur fossils of all time, the fighting dinosaurs. where a Velociraptor and Protoceratops had died, probably due to the collapse of a sand dune mid-fight. And of course, because the Soviets kept finding Velociraptors that were this size, they came to the realization that this is just how big they were. The Americans, on the other hand, didn't have that luxury. This was not helped by the discovery of Deinonychus over in the States, a relative of Velociraptor, but much larger. In fact, because the two animals were so similar and dromaeosaurs were still, at the time, quite an unknown group, Deinonychus was originally called Velociraptor antihopus. Basically, they thought it was a North American species of Velociraptor mongoliensis. It wasn't, of course, and it was this line of thinking, though, that ended up making it into Crichton's novel Jurassic Park, which, of course, would end up being adapted into an incredibly successful movie franchise, with its depiction of Velociraptor being, for the most part, the public's first encounter with the genus, leading to this cementation of Velociraptor as these man-sized predators entering the public subconscious. It wouldn't really be until the 90s, with the Gorbachev years and the fall of the Warsaw Pact and the Soviet Union as a whole, the real truth about Velociraptor came to light as Mongolia opened her doors back to Western paleontologists. And of course, this has led to a redemption arc for Velociraptor, with a lot of media now portraying them as they should be. Like, of course, the ever amazing prehistoric planet. So, I thank you for joining me as we have dived into the fascinating history of one of the world's most famous dinosaurs, thanks to a certain movie franchise. And I will see you next week, where, what's this? Capitulino Rasco for a P. Orzella Treco Portuneco Malnoki 1HS Postguy. Okay then, I'll see you next month.